Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Scoberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are here today again with Leona Filis. She is an attorney and she works with families with special needs. And we're going to be talking today about the 8 steps to consider when raising a child with special needs. So, Leona, we're excited to have you back today. We got a lot of write-in questions today, and we aim to answer just as many of those as we can during the time that we have together. So if you sent your question in, it is not necessary to put your question in the chat box because we did receive it. If you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to put those in the chat box. I'll be reading those out to Leona. From a housekeeping perspective, we are in webinar mode. We can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there, and you do have the ability to put your questions in the chat box should you have one that comes up during this presentation. Everybody that's registered for today's webinar is going to get a copy of today's slides and a link to the recording in their email. I always like to mention that so you don't have to take notes on every single slide or everything that you see on the screen today, because you are going to get a copy of those slides. For those that have attended our webinars in the past, welcome back. Thanks for your support and always attending. It is always our hope. We do these webinars because we want to encourage you and empower you and give you some of the tools and resources that you need to be successful when planning for your loved one with a disability. As a parent to a kid with disabilities, I think what we do is hard. What we're not supposed to do, what we're supposed to do, all the hoops we're supposed to jump through to make sure that everything is right and that we don't mess any benefits up and that we're getting the things that we're supposed to get. It's a lot. It's drinking from the fire hose. So these webinars were created, I don't even know how long ago, a long time ago, when one of my kids was transitioning, and I was frustrated on how difficult everything is. And this is what I do for a living. I eat, sleep, and breathe this. I know this stuff, and it still felt difficult to me. So we hope that you'll be encouraged. We hope that you'll be empowered. And I hope that you walk away from any of our webinars that you attend and you feel like you have somebody in your pocket that you can reach out to and call if you need help. There's a lot of help out there for us. When it comes to navigating these things, because a lot of times when things feel difficult, we put it on the shelf, put it on the back burner of things you're going to get to later when things aren't busy, and that later never comes. So we have the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. That is going to be something that you can subscribe to for free. There are over 500 webinars on planning for special needs. If you can think of the topic, it is probably out there. And we've tried to label them in such a manner that you can kind of search for the step that you're on in your planning journey and get the help that you need there. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy and chartered special needs consultants. Families come to us because they want to plan for the future of their loved one with a disability. And Leona, there's a lot of confusion. We get calls all the time, people calling us and saying, hey, I would like to get guardianship set up, or I need to set up a special needs trust. And when it comes to planning for special needs, you have a team. There are a team of people that are going to help you on your planning journey. There's somebody like Leona, an attorney, an estate planning attorney that can help you with the special needs trust, the guardianship, your wills, powers of attorney, all those types of things. The attorney is going to be able to help you with. We're the money side. How and when should I apply for public benefits? How do I maintain those public benefits without losing them? How do I retire and stay retired and still have enough money to fund a special needs trust for my loved one when I'm gone? So we help people do all of those types of things. And a third person that you might have at the table when it comes to planning, you might have a CPA. We have several CPAs that we've done webinars with in the past that they too have a special needs child, and their practice is nuanced and has a broad understanding of taxation and the special needs trust. So you might want to check those out too. But I always just like to clear up the lines of who does what and the seats at the table, because it does matter on your planning journey. We help people put protection plans in place. We do lifetime care plans. We do a lot of transition planning. We help set up those ABLE accounts, and we're going to talk briefly about that today. There's entire presentations about ABLE accounts on our YouTube channel. And we do a lot of advocacy by way of these webinars. So we are here to support you on your journey, and we are so glad that you've come today. If you're new to us, I know for the people that have attended over and over, they've heard this a million times, but we always have new people to our webinars as well that are hearing this for the very first time. So when it comes to planning, what we want you to do is we want you to think about how you hope the future will look, not just for your loved one, because I never have to tell parents to think about your kid, because it's all we think about. It's all we think about, right? But I think that it's also important for us to think about how we hope our retirement might look, our semblance of retirement. If we have a loved one with a disability that will be with us or will have care needs for the rest of their life, it's different than a family that has neurotypical kids that sail off into the sunset and then you're kind of the empty nest. It's a little bit of a different track. So thinking about those things, developing a future care plan, we are definitely fans of people thinking about how they hope things will look for the future and developing a plan now, not in crisis. Don't wait for the accident or the crisis or the health or an early death or things like that to happen to realize that we didn't have these things in place. When it comes to kids, I know that we have people that attend from all across the United States. We have people that attend, maybe they have a 50-year-old. We have people that have 16-year-olds and they're thinking about transitioning. We have people that are on here that may have just got a new diagnosis and they're reeling from that diagnosis. But thinking about the plan, having your plan and working your plan is going to be really, really important as we move through this process. And I think the other thing that I like to say is that it does feel overwhelming. You don't have to be a millionaire to plan for a person with a disability, to think about these things. It's steps. And we help you organize and align your steps in the order that you need to take them. And that is just right in line with what Leona is going to talk to us today about, the 8 steps to consider when raising a child with special needs. So Leona, thank you so much for being here with us again today. And I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you to Consolidated Planning Group again for having me here and giving me this space so I can talk to other families that have children with special needs. I'm with Filis Law Firm, and we focus on helping families with children with special needs. And the way that I came about the 8 steps to consider when you're raising a child with special needs is I had a lot of discussions with many family members and friends about my son and the difficulties that we faced in so many different areas. And every time that a legal topic came up, that perked my interest, and I started to research more heavily on those things. And I came up with this list, and I try to have this list in an order that makes sense for your child in those early years after you have the diagnosis. So I'm ready to get started. This is specifically for Texas, and it's not legal advice, but it is information to help you with your loved one.
And I just wanted to mention, because we do have folks that attend our webinars, again, all across the United States. We serve families all across the United States. But every law is very specific when it comes to their special needs trust, their guardianship, sometimes they call it conservatorship. So as it relates to those 2 topics, you're going to want to consult an attorney in your area, in your state, for those type of topics. But in general, a lot of these 8 steps are going to be generalized for all people. It's just the specific laws for the legal documents might be different in your state.
Thank you. Well, these are the different steps that we'll talk about, and certain things parents can do on their own, and then certain things that parents should work with an attorney on. So the first one that we have is always my first question when I talk to a new family that has a child with special needs, I ask them if they have signed up their child for the interest list for Medicaid waiver programs. Every state has a Medicaid waiver program. And what we'll just talk about are different programs that are Texas specific, but you might have something in your state that is similar. And we did have some questions early on about the waiver programs. So we have a few programs. If you could go to the next slide. Yeah, so here's one of the, here are some of the programs that we have in Texas. For parents that have children with, let's say, Duchenne muscular dystrophy or cerebral palsy, we might have them eligible for MDCP, medically dependent children's program. For our kids on the spectrum, CLASS, community living assistance and support services, is wonderful. And then we also have deafblind with multiple disabilities. There's a variety of waiver programs available to you. You would go ahead and have the next slide, please. There's a phone number that you can call for Health and Human Services Commission. This particular commission administers about 2 to 3 of these waiver programs. Now, I would like for parents to understand, sign up for as many waiver programs as you can for your child, and understand that once you do start receiving services, it's only services from one waiver program at a time. So go
I
ahead.
would just like to mention that, you know, I think in our community, Leona, people say all the time of, you know, have you signed up for the interest list or have you signed up for the Medicaid waivers? And we throw that around, but we don't always explain what it's for. So Medicaid waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services. All states have Medicaid waivers. Unfortunately for Texans, our waiver waiting list is upwards of 20 years, 17 to 20 years is what they're quoting right now. So that's how long it takes for a person to actually get approved for a waiver because they only have so many slots. But there are many states all throughout the United States that actually don't have any waiting list for these programs. So another confusing thing, Leona, I want to mention, so this CLASS, there is a separate phone number for CLASS, MDCP, and deafblind multiple disabilities, which is the phone number that is on the screen right here. So sometimes people call this number and they think that they are signed up for all of the waivers in Texas, but they are actually not. So in Texas, we have something called a LIDA, a Local Intellectual Developmental Disability Authority, LIDA.
Yes.
And the LIDA is by county. So every county has their own LIDA, and you're going to want to contact your LIDA. We have an entire webinar on Medicaid waivers, what they are, who they serve, how to get signed up. So you can check that out on the YouTube channel. But the LIDA is where you're going to get signed up for HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice. Those are kind of the places that you'll get there. And so what we've heard from families is that 7 years ago they called and they got their name on CLASS and they thought they were on all of the waiver interest lists, and then 7 years later they find out that they accidentally were not on those other waivers that I just mentioned. So it's important to be vigilant of that.
Definitely. And for us in Harris County, it would be the Harris Center that you would call, and you'd answer pretty much the same questions that you would answer, that you would be asked at the state level. So with the half a dozen programs, half of those are administered at state level. The other half seem to be administered at the local level. So Allison, thank you very much. One of the questions that we did have earlier was asking about, CDS. Now, once you do have your child come off of the waiting list for one of these waiver programs, and if they're deemed to be qualified to receive services, you'll have an option called Consumer Directed Services option. And what that does is that allows you to make a choice. If you use the CDS option, then you will be the person in charge of hiring the staff that will come to your house to provide services. So in this class slide, you'll see that there's speech and language pathology, OT, PT, and these people, respite care, and these people will be coming to your house to provide services to your loved one. If you choose the CDS option, one of the pros about it is that you are the one that you hire them. And they can be family, neighbors, and friends. So someone had asked, what are the pros and what are the cons? I think that you can hire your own people is both pro and con. It depends on how involved you want to be with this process. Do you want to take the time to recruit, interview, and train your service providers? Do you want to track their providers' hours and keep copies of all the required CDS paperwork? There's a option to fire your provider as well. So it depends on your level, your desired level of involvement, whether or not once you do get these services from a waiver program, if you want to be involved in who comes into your house.
I also think that prior to COVID, there was an issue. There was a shortage of caregivers, and their base rate of pay isn't great for this. It's not great at all. But then post-COVID, I think a lot of people, we talk to a lot of people that actually are getting the waiver and saying that they're having a really hard time staffing their nursing hours or staffing their attendant hours. And that can be a problem with some of the agencies. Some agencies are better than others. And what I have found is that on a lot of these special needs Facebook parent groups, you can, say what area you're in, and other veteran parents will tell you their good or indifferent or bad experience with some of the professional providers out there and ones that they've had, the most success with. There's a lot of insight on some of those pages.
Yes, I myself am a member of a lot of those groups so that I can learn a little bit more every time that I see a post. So I appreciate all of those Facebook groups out there. One of the benefits, again, circling back to children with autism, they really do benefit from the class program, and that's because of the specialized therapies. In this particular waiver program, there's aquatic therapy. Hippotherapy is where there's a combination of horseback riding therapy plus an additional therapy like physical therapy. There's also massage therapy for children with, let's see, I guess it would be anxiety. That would help also with the music therapy and recreational therapy. So that's just a little information about one of the programs that is offered. This right here is a chart from HHS, Health and Human Services, and this is the Texas specific chart. And this shows you a list of the different programs, waiver programs, class, deaf, blind, multiple disabilities, home and community-based services. And it also shows you how long the wait is. And what you can do is look for the reduction list, for the interest list, and on the Health and Human Services website to see how long the wait is. And you can see for class, it's in the 15 to 16, 16 to 17 year range. On our next slide, you'll see also there's another specific program that might be beneficial to a lot of our people that are in attendance here, home and community-based services. Now, I have seen this particular waiver benefit people that have children who are reaching adulthood and they have Down syndrome or an intellectual disability. But this allows for the adult child, to live in a group home and pay for day habilitation. On the next slide, we'll see that there is an IQ requirement, and the child must be Medicaid eligible. And with this waiver and most of the Medicaid waiver programs, this is how parents can get help and services before the child turns 18, because typically for government benefits, the government will look at the parent's income or the household income and assets to determine eligibility. With most of these waiver programs, they only look at your child's income and assets. Next slide, please.
Leona, this is a really big deal,
Mhm.
and because I know that you talk to a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and the first thing that they say is, "Oh, we wouldn't qualify for Medicaid." And so what you just said is really, really important in understanding how they only count the child's income and assets for this. All states have multiple Medicaid programs. It's not just one, and the requirements for each of those Medicaid programs differ a little bit. And so for most of the Medicaid waivers in Texas, the income of the individual, as long as it's less than 300% of SSI, which for 2025, that's 2901. Right now, SSI is 967 a month, so times three, that's 2901. For most of them, as long as their income, even if it's Social Security income is less than that, then they can still qualify. There are different requirements for the Texas home living, so I should mention that because that doesn't fall. That's one of the outliers that doesn't fall under that category.
Thank you. Oh, and this slide here, if you are in the Houston, Harris County area, your LIDA that Allison was talking about, the phone number is listed at the top of this slide. And so these are things that you would be, these are questions or things that you would be asked when you make the call. So as soon as you have a diagnosis for your child, try to get them on the Medicaid waiver program interest list. There's two numbers that you'll call, the state level and your local level, and the agent will ask you about your child's social, their name, date of birth, do they currently receive Medicaid? And understand that in some cases, the Health and Human Services will mail out updates to you about where your child falls on the list currently, or if you're coming off of the list and you need to schedule an appointment. So if you move, always remember to update your HHS and your LIDA with your new address.
If they can't find you, they truly, I have seen where they have taken people off the list. And the letter basically says you need to respond within this number of days. Some littles will take people off the list, some people won't. But one cool thing that happened a couple of years ago, it used to be, Leona, that if I wanted to know where my child was on the interest list, that I had to call the LIDA, the one person at the LIDA, and leave a message to find out what number. There was like not a website where I could see this myself or log in. And I always thought that that was so old school. Like it seemed weird to me. Like, am I doing this wrong? But a couple of years ago, they updated this on yourtexasbenefits.com, the Medicaid login. And on the right-hand side, when you log into Your Texas Benefits, on the right-hand side, there's a little box that says interest list. You can click on that box and it's a few more clicks and you can see exactly where your child is on the list and kind of what's going on. So that was definitely a process improvement that you don't have to call somebody. You can actually just log in and see it. So if
Yes.
you haven't looked in a while, I do encourage you to go to Your Texas Benefits. Some of you may say, well, gosh, I never even created a login for Your Texas Benefits. You absolutely can. Go ahead and create that login and then you should be able to see where they are on the list. Okay?
And here is a slide that shows back from June 2023, all the people that are waiting on the different lists. I have the newest information from May 31, 2025. Class now has 94,322 people waiting. The largest one is waiting list is for health and our home and community-based services, HCS. That has 126,167 people on their waiting list. Now, I had said earlier, sign up for as many waiver lists as you can. So now there is a unduplicated count across all of the 6 interest lists. And as of May 31st, 2025, there's 184,7 676 people on the interest list. And unfortunately, for this number to go down, you have to wait for your turn or your child's turn by either having slots open up like what's on the slide here, which has to be approved by our legislature, or somebody moves or somebody dies, and then that slot opens up.
I would just like to add to just add a little bit of encouragement. It is my belief that there could be even over half of those people on some of these lists that actually won't qualify, right? Because most, other than the class and like Star Plus and stuff, most of them have an intellectual disability requirement of an IQ of 70 or below, or 75 and below with multiple disabilities.
Mhm.
And so a person can have 10 different disabilities for a lot of these waivers, but not have an intellectual disability, and they are categorically not eligible for these. And so I think as Texans, we've been trained to put your kid on all of the interest lists because you never know. They might not have an intellectual disability now, but later they may test under. Maybe they're kind of close. They're on that line, that gray area. And so I would just say that the numbers are huge and they're staggering and they're kind of crazy. But I would say that because we've been taught to do that, there's a lot of people on there that absolutely will not qualify for the IDD requirement.
Well, and I'll let you know one thing. My son has come off of the one waiting list twice now, which is Medically Dependent Children's Program. And when I get the letter saying, hey, you're off of the interest list, I choose to decline and be put back at the bottom of the list for my son. Not that not to clog up the system, but in the event that something happens to him where he does become medically dependent, I want to go ahead and make sure that he's on the list to receive benefits should he need them.
And that's totally a wise thing to do. And I just wanted to say on MDCP that medically dependent fragile children, it's not by diagnosis per se. I always say think equipment, think G-tube, think trach, think ventilator, think inability to do any of the activities of daily living. High high needs is, where the medically, so it's not specifically for one specific diagnosis. I mean, some diagnoses are probably a slam dunk, but it's, when somebody has a trach or a G-tube or some of these other things and other equipments, or they basically need round the clock care, or high levels of care, that's where they're going to fall into that MDCP. And so a lot of times people don't know that. They just think it's just for children that are disabled, and it's more than just a disabled child for MDCP.
Yep. And let's just say, once you do have a child that qualifies for one of these Medicaid waiver programs, they will be offered Medicaid. And some people will take their child off of their employer provided health insurance because their child's getting Medicaid. And my suggestion is not to do that. In Texas, we have a program called Get HIP, HIPP. And what it allows for is it allows the state of Texas to decide, are we going to benefit? Is the state of Texas who pays the bills for Medicaid? Are the bills for this child, the expenses, the medical expenses, is that more than what it would cost a parent to keep their child on their employer provided health insurance? And if the expenses, the medical expenses paid for by Medicaid would exceed the amount that a parent pays, basically by whatever's taken out of their paycheck every month, then they may qualify for this program, and the parents will be encouraged to keep their child covered by getting a reimbursement check every month for the amount of the health insurance premium that's taken out of their paycheck. And then that way your child has double coverage. They have the employer provided health insurance and Texas Medicaid.
And I just like to say that the employer provided health insurance, I'm a fan. So You know, I have a kid that has Medicare, Medicaid, and employer-provided health insurance. We actually have three coverages, which equates to we pay basically nothing out of pocket for anything for a said child, right? The employer health plan is going to have a broader network. It's going to usually allow you the flexibility to go to the doctors that you want to see, where Medicaid is a very streamlined network, and a lot of the families that we work with don't really like the doctors that are in network. Now, it's true, the children's hospitals, the good hospitals and things like that are in network with Medicaid, but a lot of our kids see specialists, highly accredited specialists that do what they do, right? And that's who we need to see. And a lot of times they're not in network, or you can't see that provider with Medicaid, but it's better with your group health plan and Medicare. So that is the why behind it, even if it can save you money. And then on that note, Leona, I always like to mention, because a lot of people don't know this, but we can keep our disabled adult children on our group health plan past age 26, as long as that disability occurred before then. There is a form through your HR department. You'll have to call HR. I have a disabled adult child. I need to keep them on my group health plan. I need the form. It needs to be signed off on by a doctor. And I always want to encourage parents to know that when you call HR, do not be surprised if you are transferred 10 times, okay? And that they tell you that they don't know what what you're talking about, because not all families know about this. They don't know to ask the questions. So the person on the other end of the phone actually never gets the question. So it might go to the supervisor to get where you need to be. And you also may have to call the health plan itself. Say it's Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare, you may have to call that number on the back of your card and get the form for them. Somebody knows about it. It is a real thing. It is for all kids that are disabled past age 26. You can keep them on your group health plan. So just ask about that. Don't find out when they're 28 that you could have kept them on your group health plan back when they were turning 26.
Definitely. Well, as Allison was saying, that a lot of these waivers are dependent, eligibility is dependent on your child's intellectual disability. My step 2 is to talk to your LIDA, your local authority, and ask them for a determination of intellectual disability. And that way you will have the qualifier satisfied for eligibility for some of these Medicaid waiver programs. Now, why are we saying we need to sign up our kids for Medicaid waiver programs? Well, a lot of these government benefits that our children are entitled to, they're not going to see until they're 18, because there's the component for it's a means test. Does the child have income and asset, and how much assets? Do their assets exceed $2,000? And so through these waiver programs, if your child comes off of the waiting list, the interest list, then you can start, your family can start receiving benefits before your child is 18. Now, let's go ahead and say your child is now receiving benefits, either through the waiver program or through SSI and Medicaid, based on their own income and assets. Well, how do we preserve these government benefits? We want to make sure that the individual with the disability does not have assets that exceed $2,000. And one way to do that is to get a special needs trust. And this is something that you can go to an attorney to. The trust is a trust agreement. Most of the time, or in many instances, the parents of the child with special needs they're the grantors. They're the ones starting the trust. The parents can be the managers of the trust, which are called trustees. And then the child with the disability is the beneficiary. This special needs trust will have its own taxpayer ID number. If there is income that requires a tax return, you would want to talk to one of those CPAs that Allison had referred to. And you want to make sure that you fund the trust appropriately. So this is where, again, consolidated planning group comes in. You can use your special needs trust for your child in your wills, so that your child does not inherit assets that exceed the value of $2,000 and then throws them off of the benefits. You would want to use special needs trust on your designation of beneficiary forms for your life insurance policies instead of your child's name and social security number, which would cause the child to lose their benefits once there's a payment from the life insurance policy.
This is something that's easy to fix, and we do talk about this on almost every webinar because most people, if they're married, they make their spouses their primary beneficiary, and then the contingent or the secondary beneficiary is divided amongst their children, their named children. And it's good in theory, but it's wrong when it comes to having a special needs child. And so if you've done that, so I think that the takeaway on this is check your beneficiaries, life insurance outside of work, at work, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, old pensions, other things like that that slip through the cracks. You're going to want to check on those. And if you've named your disabled loved one as a beneficiary, don't panic. It can be fixed. If you have a special needs trust, you just need to change their name on a change of beneficiary form to the name of the special needs trust for benefit of said child. So that's just a free change of beneficiary form. All companies have free change of beneficiaries. It'll cost you nothing to do that. If you do not have a special needs trust set up, then obviously you would have the costs associated with setting up a special needs trust. But it does need to be fixed. And I would also just like to mention, because I hear this all the time too, Leona, well, that's okay. We're just going to disinherit little Johnny. We're going to give little Johnny's portion to Bobby. And Bobby's going to take care of little Johnny. And that is good in theory. And we believe that the brothers love each other, and that's fine. But Bobby could die. Bobby could become disabled. Bobby could get divorced, and the money could be tied up in some debacle, whereas Johnny's needs are not being met. So it is better and cleaner not to do that, because what I say is that the ifs in life truly do happen, and we don't think about it until it happens. And it's kind of one of those things of, oh snap, we should have thought about that, or we should have done it differently. So disinheriting your disabled loved one is not the best route to take.
Right. And little Bobby can get sued.
Absolutely.
So, and the assets are not protected like they would be if Bobby, same person, was the successor trustee
Of the trust for the benefit of
of
said
the
child, because if anything happens to Bobby in that example, there would be a successor trustee, but the money would still be protected for the benefit of the individual with the disability. So it's just really important. And having a consultation with Leona, she would take a deeper dive on that things. People talk about unequal distributions and other things like that. Should I leave all the same amount to all of my kids, or should there be an unequal distribution? And she can help walk you through, what are the doors that you can walk through as it relates to this. But it is just an important conversation if you don't have one of these set up already.
Yeah, and on the screen is the different types, some of the types of expenses that the trust can pay for. We have a question about what happens to the trust if a child dies early in life. In your trust agreement that you create with your attorney, you'll have successor beneficiaries. Now, this is for a third-party trust, and I'm speaking about Texas specifically. There's no payback clause or clawback issues with SSI, with a third-party trust. And so what that means is if your child has received Medicaid benefits during their lifetime, there's a program called MERP, Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. MERP is allowed to access certain assets of a deceased person if that person had received benefits, Medicaid benefits during their lifetime. So one of the other types of special needs trust is a first-party special needs trust. First-party special needs trust is what you would use for a divorce, for indefinite child support, as we do in Texas. We had a question about for what happens with divorce, child support for special needs child past 18. In your decree, if you're getting divorced and you have a child who is special needs, you would want a determination of their disability. You would want to ask for indefinite child support for the lifetime of that child. You'd want to have the child support paid directly to a first party trust, first party supplemental needs trust, which could, the trustee could be you still, the obligee parent, the person who is providing most of the caregiving for that child. And you would want to make sure that you also have a third party trust in your divorce. And the reason why is because if your child with special needs is entitled to lifetime child support to be paid out for that child, and if your spouse, who is now your ex-spouse, with the obligation to pay lifetime child support, if they die, or when they die, their estate is still required to pay child support for your child with special needs for the lifetime of that child. So in many cases, if our child's life expectancy is still maybe 30 years, the child support obligation for future child support can be large. And the deceased parent may not have an estate valued at the amount of the child support that is owed. So in your special needs provisions in your divorce, I would say that you would require the parent who's paying child support to have life insurance that would cover future child support obligations, and making the third party trust the beneficiary. And moving on.
I do think that these conversations, we do have webinars on divorce and special needs, so you can check those out on the YouTube channel. But having these conversations and getting things set up properly on the front end is cheaper than trying to get it set up on the back end. And I always just like to clarify roles again, because there is a lot of confusion. So you probably get calls from people saying that I'm going to go through a divorce. Can you help me? Estate planning attorneys and divorce attorneys or family law attorneys do things differently, right? So if you're going through a divorce, then you need that family law attorney. And we do have recommendations, and we do recommend that you work with one that is nuanced with people with disabilities. It usually goes smoother and they know what to ask for. So a person like Leona is going to be the legal documents, the guardianship, the special needs trust, you know, all of the wills and the documents that go along with the wills, but she herself doesn't do divorce, right? She might set up the trust that the child support is going to go to.
Yes.
And the divorce attorney does not set up a special needs trust. So unfortunately, you got to have both. And I always just like to make that clear. So thanks for talking about that.
Thank you. So another place where you can invest for your child is in something called a 529A savings account. It's also called an ABLE account. Pretty much each state has their own version of the 529A savings account. This is a place where you and family members and the disabled individual can put money in a savings account and not have that counted as an asset by Social Security when Social Security is trying to determine eligibility for government benefits. Because the person who's trying to get Social Security or Medicaid or SSI is not supposed to have assets that exceed $2,000. Well, this 529A savings account is a safe place for funds to be deposited for your loved one who has special needs. And the first $100,000 in that savings account is not counted by Social Security. It's not considered by Social Security when determining eligibility for government benefits. One new item in the law regarding ABLE accounts is that in Texas, it used to be that you had to be eligible for a 529A savings account. you would need to have your disability manifest prior to a certain age. It was something like, I think, 22 years of age. But we've
It,
had an
I,
adjustment.
it
Mhm.
was, it was 26. I'm sorry, 22 and 26 between Social Security Administration, ABLE, and health insurance. It, it is 26 until 2020 46. And what is that number you've got it going to in 2046?
46. Yep.
46. That's a
Yep.
big difference.
That is. So if you have children that may, adult children that may have had sustained a life altering injury, and now is disabled, if that disability occurred prior to age 46, they too can use the 529A savings account. And there are many qualified expenses that you can spend the money on. You can also invest. So this is something new where you can, or it's new to me, you can choose to have the money that's in your savings account invested. And so that is interesting because the interest earned on these investments are tax-free. So that is something, and I know that y'all help, Consolidated Planning Group helps with ABLE accounts.
Yes, I just want to say with the ABLE accounts that a lot of people ask, why do I need an ABLE account in a special needs trust? The Social Security Administration in October of last year decided that it turns out that people do need food, so they're not going to count providing food for people against people anymore. So starting in October of last year, an ABLE account can pay for food and shelter, whereas it used to be they couldn't pay for food, but it can pay for shelter that and avoid a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So basically, you can pay for shelter out of a special needs trust. You absolutely can. But if the individual is getting SSI, there would be a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So we're talking about monthly debt service, rent, mortgage payments, utilities, those types of things where you can pay for those things out of an ABLE account and there is no 1/3 reduction to SSI. And I like to tell people to think of an ABLE account. It is not a Roth IRA, but it acts like one because it's after-tax money that goes in. The money grows tax-free and there's tax-free distributions as long as the distribution can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability. You can pay for it out of an ABLE account. So from an accounting perspective, what should you keep track of? I tell people just keep a spreadsheet of what you spend the money on. I've had exactly no one ever ask to produce what they spent the money on. But I have all ideas that one year the IRS is going to be like, let's ask everybody for that. So I think you should always keep good records on what you spent the money on. But I mean, it could be financial services, it could be legal services, it could be day programs, it could be co-pays out of pocket, it could be entertainment, it could be schooling, you could pay for higher education. There's so many things. There's fewer things that you can't pay for out of an ABLE account. Like, don't get crazy. You can't redo your kitchen for an ABLE account, but maybe your loved one needs a handicap shower. That is an eligible, expense. We had one family that needed to make an apron on their driveway because of a wheelchair ramp from the van. That's cool. But, so as long as it's for the best interest of that person, it's achieving a better life for that individual, then it's usually not going to be scrutinized, but keep your records.
What I've also talked to different families about is getting sufficient life insurance and disability insurance on both parents. So if you have a family where you have both parents and your child with special needs, typically there's one parent that's the breadwinner parent and one parent that's the caregiver parent. And life insurance and also disability insurance should be covering both parents. Because if the caregiver parent becomes disabled, they may need a team of people to step in and help take care of the household. And so getting proper insurance is very important.
I couldn't agree more on that. And the other thing that I like to talk about with the insurance, and get it while you can, while you're still insurable. Don't wait till you're uninsurable, because then you're a day late and a dollar short on getting the insurance. I like to think of the life insurance as an umbrella over your overall financial plan. I like to think of life insurance of keeping your retirement assets nimble in the 25 to 35 years that you're going to be in retirement. Because after all, you're the payer of all these bills, right? So you want to keep your assets available and nimble for your retirement and your enjoyment in retirement. And that life insurance is often used to fund a special needs trust. And honestly, people don't really spend too much time thinking about disability. Usually open enrollment usually happens in the fall for your health, your policies through your job, and they take effect in January. There's some caveats to that. But disability insurance typically is going to pay about 60% of your disabled earnings, which most people would agree. If I said I cut your salary by 40% tomorrow, would that hurt your family? And the answer is usually yes. But if the employer gives the disability insurance to the individual as opposed to the individual paying for it out of their check, those benefits are taxed on top of that big drastic cut. So making sure that you have that gap covered and that disability covered, a person is more likely to be disabled by age 65 than they are to be deceased. And our ability to earn a living is one of the biggest assets that we have. So it's very important to look at that. Some employers offer it for free. Some employers offer a buy-up where you can get additional amounts of disability insurance. So if you're here, if you're not the breadwinner, or you don't have, you don't work outside the home, talk to your spouse about this. Look at both of your coverage. If you guys both work outside of the home, this is critically important. And overall, the ability, we have a tall order of being able to fund a special needs trust and retire and stay retired for 25 to 35 years. So looking at this early and thinking about it again before the crisis happens, before something happens that we weren't planning on, is really, really important. And one thing that I want to let you guys know is that when you start a new job, so some people might be sitting on here thinking, oh gosh, I'm uninsurable. I've had cancer, I've had a heart attack, I've had whatever you've had. And you're thinking that you're uninsurable. And it's true probably for the outside that you might be. But when you go to a new job and you start a new job and they offer group disability and group life insurance, when you're a new part of the group, you don't go through underwriting. So even though you've been denied before, it's a yes now when you went to that new employer. So I just want to tell people that because a lot of people don't know that.
Wonderful. Let's see. So now we're getting to the part where you definitely need to talk to an attorney, the estate planning part. And estate planning is different for families that have children with special needs because you want to make sure that anything that you do with your will does not affect your child's eligibility for benefits in the future. And so one of the things that we like to talk to parents about is in their will, go ahead and have a special needs trust prepared separately. And I'll talk about that later. But you want to have that special needs trust pointed at inside your will. So as Allison was saying earlier, typically in a will, you'll have everything goes to your spouse. Same thing with your insurance policies, everything goes to the spouse. And then the alternate beneficiaries in the event that your spouse predeceases you are the children. And the children can get their inheritance equally proportioned. For your child with special needs, you will need the third-party supplemental needs trust. And that is the vehicle that you will use and you will point at in your will so that your child with special needs does not directly benefit and receive the inheritance. They'll benefit definitely through the trust. And so talking to parents to make sure that they have their estate planning matters ready and taken care of is very important. And we do offer at Filis Law Firm free 30-minute initial consultations to talk to you about wills, talk to you about power of attorney, medical power of attorney, things like that. We also talk to parents about children who may have disabilities, but they may not have intellectual disabilities. And so when that child turns 18, because we did have a question about when the child turns 18, I want to make sure that I have authority to make medical decisions. Well, you can have your child, once they turn 18, sign a power of attorney, medical power of attorney, supported decision-making agreement. These are also estate planning documents that will benefit the family, because if you have a child who has special needs, they may not need guardianship. They may need to be able to still maintain their independence, but also rely on parents by allowing the parents to be their agents in the power of attorney and medical power of attorney.
So, Leona, I know that we do entire webinars on guardianship and alternatives to guardianship, but in Texas, it's the least restrictive, most appropriate for the ward, the human, the person, but the least restrictive, most appropriate. And I always just like to encourage people to have a talk with an attorney that does this, like whether you work with Leona or you work with somebody else. They don't bite, and they are here to talk to you and walk you through the options that might be the best option for your child. And they'll talk to the child and things like that. And a lot of times people say they're avoiding guardianship because maybe their child has some aggression or violence or other things like that, and they're worried about being liable. There's a lot of myths out there. And so having that consultation with the attorney can kind of quash some of those myths and give you a clear direction going forward. And the thing is you can always try with the least restrictive. And if that doesn't work out, then you can up the ante, right? And that might be a better option than starting out with the big guns and then trying to dial it back, right?
That would definitely be the strategy if your child has the capacity to understand the documents that they're signing. If your child does not understand the ramifications of a power of attorney, they should not be signing a power of attorney.
And we see a lot of that too, and that's a problem because our kids are going to sign whatever that we tell them to if they have the ability to. And if a person doesn't have capacity, we've seen that blow up in people's faces before where they actually had a power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and all these things signed, but the person never ever had capacity. So that's why it's so important to get it right and to work with a professional who is trained to walk you through the doors and what might be the best for your child. So we're about out of time for today. Tell us about this intestate succession.
Okay, if you die without a will, then you have died intestate. And what happens is the state of Texas has default rules as to who will receive your assets from your estate when you die. If you as a parent die and you're the second to die and you have children, your children will inherit your estate. And if your child with special needs owns anything of value that exceeds $2,000, that will jeopardize their benefits. And so this is another very important reason why parents should plan ahead, get a third-party supplemental needs trust, and get a will that points to that trust to benefit their child with special needs and not jeopardize their government benefits.
We see about 95% of people either have no will or they have an extremely outdated will. So it's time to look at that, get one, even if it's very simple, it's a good thing to have.
Yes, definitely, very much so. And there was one question about what happens to a 529 if a child dies early in life. You can list alternate beneficiaries when you set up the 529A bank account. However, 529A bank accounts are subject to MERP, which we discussed earlier with the first party supplemental needs trust. So if the individual had received benefits from Medicaid, then that asset in the 529A bank account could be taken by MERP to
the Medicaid payback specifically.
Yep, that's it, exactly.
And then the other beneficiary also has to have a disability. So not everybody has more than one family member with a person with the disability, but anything left over in general, Leona, is going to go to that person's estate. So if there's money left over after the Medicaid payback, then it
Mhm.
would go to the child's estate. And I do want to mention, because we have people from other states, not all states have a Medicaid payback. So the question that comes up for Texas is, so if I go to another state that doesn't have a Medicaid payback on their ABLE account and I get their ABLE account, do I still have a Medicaid payback? And the answer is yes, because you're a Texas resident. So it's a good idea, it's a good thought, but the answer is the Medicaid payback still exists because it depends on your state's Medicaid program and their guidelines. That question has come up so many times. It's a great question. It's a great thought if it worked, but it doesn't. So.
That way, do try to strategize to make sure that we maximize benefits lifelong for our loved ones with special needs.
So we are out of time for today. We're kind of at step 6. Everybody's going to get a copy of today's slides, and we've got Leona's contact information on the board. I think what we'll do, Leona, let's do a part 2 of this webinar, and let's start at number 6 because education's a big deal. And I don't want us to skip over that. So again, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides, but we're going to get a part 2 of this presentation back on track so we can take a deeper dive. We spent time kind of talking about the things that that were important, and I think all of those things were worthy of that conversation, and we will do the same with the remaining steps 6 through 8. So Leona, I want to say thank you for being here with us today. We're so glad that you're here. You always give such great information, and as she mentioned, she offers free personalized consultations. Consolidated Planning Group does as well. So if you have deeper questions that didn't get answered, I know that there was a lot of questions. We do a lot of webinars on Medicaid waivers, on ABLE accounts, on the Special Needs Trust, on guardianship. All of these topics are deep and wide, and they all have their own webinar because we can't fit it all in the course of an hour. So do check out our YouTube channel. A couple of slides ago, I think we had our upcoming webinars. When you get your slides today, you can click on that, and you can register for any of our upcoming webinars on those topics as well. So thanks everyone for being here today. If you had a question that didn't get answered, reach out to myself, reach out to Leona. We're happy to help, and like I said, we always offer free personalized consultations. So thanks so much everybody for attending today, and we will look forward to connecting with everybody again soon. Thanks, Leona.
Thank you.
Bye now.